Hello, Nighthawks. Welcome to the wrap-up presentations of the Nighthawk Cafe diorama. Hello, Nighthawks. Welcome to the wrap-up presentations of the Nighthawk Cafe diorama. We're going to tonight weather, add the interior partitions, and synchronize the lighting. We start by adding view blocks and interior partitions. In this case, we're in the annex, putting in the locations. This is for the upper floor. The partitions are assembled using weights and white glue. The partitions are homemade, and they will be glued to the subfloor for the second floor. Here's the floor with the partitions starting to go in place. There's a complete view block on the two center windows to the right. Those will not have any illumination. The rest of the upper area will be lighted. These are the sidewalks. We start by extending the sidewalk that came with the kit. The front sidewalk of the annex, I add cracks and chips and broken things, concrete, as you often see in New York. I paint the window frames, get them ready for glazing. The windows are pre-painted inside and out. I add pressure-sensitive adhesive with a toothpick to the outside of the windows, and then to get the rice for that custom cut the glazing. While you got the paintbrush out, paint a bunch of strips of scrap material. You're going to use these for trim, both in the green and the red. I take all the clippings from the kit, throw those into the paint booth, and save them for trim. The outside trim of the fascia on the annex. Here we see before glazing, test fitting the fascia and the windows, which are going to be now glazed. The barber pole just set temporarily in place to set the scene. To install the glazing, I use pressure-sensitive adhesive, and then I cut out window signs like Tony's Barber Shop, came from a Walther set. The curtain I cut out of scrap AMD paper. Here's the window treatments in place. That fits on the inside of the glazing. Getting ready to cut the signs out to put inside the barber shop. Have those ready. Test fit the way the fascia fits in. In this case, it took a little extra sanding to get the corner pieces to line up properly. So trim and sand those as you go along, and make sure you keep your touch-up paint available. Once I was satisfied with the fascia, I detailed the interior. I gave it a barber and a person in the chair. The sidewalk is put in place. The extra chairs and the background lit for the hardware store. The curtains and Venetian blinds. Venetian blinds are from Walther's. The curtains are from a Keebri kit, cut, placed, and some pressure sensitive on each one of those is a great way to install them inside the building. Here we've got the curtains and sash installed, and those again vary the profile there. And when you put the lighting on the inside, the curtains will glow somewhat translucent, and you'll get few view through the lighting. Here I've got the Walther's Venetian blinds installed over the tall windows, and some thin torn tissue over the curtain area of the lower window. Nothing fancy here, just to provide a little bit of translucent look. Put the fascia back in place. See how everything fits up. Add the glazing, and you're ready to finish off the inside. A bit of a flaw picked up though. Look at the color in the upper left-hand windows. And when we look at the upstairs from the back of that, that bright blue does not look right. I used the wrong bulbs. I used ultra bright LEDs up there, and the color was just too bright and it made the windows look bluish. This is something not in keeping with the prototype. It kind of stood out too much. So by taking those ultra bright LEDs out and we replaced them with a more appropriate yellow glow. These are also LEDs, but they are called warm white or yellow glows, and they're much more appropriate than the ultra bright LEDs. We probably won't use those again. Looking at the front view, where we've got the barber shop, the hardware store, East End Hardware, and the windows above that look appropriate. On the right hand side, the windows, you're looking at blue walls, so that's appropriate for the color. Now we're looking down the alley towards Nighthawks to see how the edges are going to fit together. It was the first attempt at bringing the buildings together. You see I've got a wire in the back that I've got to hide, and I've got to remove the protective cover from the mirror. But that's how the sidewalk is going to line up. That far corner of the sidewalk had no material to cover it, so I had to make pieces out of scrap material to fit in and match up to the mirror, which you see up above. The front fell together very nicely. When you look at the mirror in this view, it sets fine on that side, and this will work very well for reflecting down the alley. And again, you see how it shows the curved area. You can see by the barber pole. When you start cutting pieces for that same mirror, you're going to get an effect where the top comes right together. We're cutting new pieces for the sidewalk, test fitting them. Once you're satisfied with the fit, glue them down. Glue your new sidewalk pieces in place. Weight them down. Let them set till the white glue is able to be handled. Usually takes about 30 minutes. Go on, work something else. Then come back and see how the sidewalk pieces fit in. Here I've added the asphalt or the street. See how that lines up, and the street also turns back into the mirror. So be aware of the fit on all the sides there. Use a file if you need to get things tight. Now let's start looking at some of the night scenes. Out in the back we have the warehouse where the lights have now been turned to more moderate colors. The sequencing has been stretched out by programming the lights for longer on times. While we have a break in the action, let's take a look at some details. The kit comes supplied with an exhaust duct that was to be used alongside the Nighthawks building. I preferred it over on the warehouse area, so I cut grooves in it to show the seams of the vent work. Take it to the paint pit, give it a coat of primer. That smooths it all out, gives you a nice surface to work from. After the primer is thoroughly dry, I hand brushed on a coat of aluminum paint, and I've added a couple of pins. The bottom one is actually representing a steam vent that would go into this bottom of it. That provides me 2 points of support. Drill some holes to allow that vent to be supported by wires. Just don't rely on gluing it to the outside of the building. I always like to have some kind of reinforcement because the model is ever moved, the things like exhaust pipes tend to fall off pretty easily. Once it's installed, you start adding a bit of weathering. Here I've chose to rust it up a little bit before a final coat of dull coat, but by putting some rusty highlights on it, looks quite realistic, and it's a nice piece for the outside. For the loading door, I wanted to put in a bumper on the loading dock, so drilled in on a piece of scrap wood, hunter line stain, some nut bolt washer castings, and some more stain around the bolt heads to give it that rusted effect. Keep those stains out because we're going to start using some of those along the outside of the building as well. Before we get too far, I want to stop and brush up on decaling. Putting on decals on a rough surface, you have to give it a coat of high gloss material. In this case, it's an old gloss finish I put on top of it. And then the standard soak your decals. I always soak mine in distilled water so you don't get that whitish mineral stain around the edge of your decal that you can't remove. Soak it in distilled for a few seconds, let it slip off the sheet, push it down with a stiff bristle brush, get all the air bubbles out. Multiple coats of Solvaset or whatever your favorite decal setting solution is, and you get a decal. This one happened to be custom printed off some micro-mark decal sheet, and away you go. I also made some decals for my railroad and turned the factory background into a warehouse by doing the same effect. A gloss coat first, slip sheet into distilled water, slip it off, push it in place, add lots of Solvaset, and you're ready to go. Starting back on the roofs, here I'm doing the annex. You're seeing the on the right side and through all the sides is a gray stone-like color that goes around the outside. The roof has been brushed with flat black. I start doing the trim on the back side using a brush and painting fascia. Remember, it's this fascia that provides a lid lip around the top of the roof so it fits on. I paint the front fascia of the annex in that famous annex green. Hand paint that. Also keep it around a touch up underneath. Here you can see how the fascia forms a lip all the way around the top of the roof, so that when the roof is in place, it's not slipping. It also provides a light block. So when that roof fits back on, fits in position, it's a good snug fit. By putting the fascia plates on after the roof was in place, lightly gluing them, you can use it as a cap. Also take this opportunity to trim any corners. This corner was not treated, so a piece of scrap material painted the same green fits in here, and add some Elmer's glue to it, and it's there forever. Here you get the full view of these extra fascia strips. I put some on the left side on the red part of the building, trimmed up the front corner with these scrap strips. These are very, very handy pieces to have along. So earlier when I talked about painting, I painted up some scrap pieces so they would be available for use. Here we started weathering the roof with pastels, both the annex and of the factory roof. These are just dry brushed on to give a nice rusty effect. Add a little dry brushing and pastels on the sidewalk. At this point I noticed a problem though. The upper left windows came out bright blue, and that's definitely not acceptable. It just doesn't look right. More fascia trim on the back side of the building here, and as we'll see in a moment, the building looks fine during the daylight. It's weathered with pastels, as is the roof, the sidewalks. Here's my little dry brushing with pastels. Also used oil paints, which are very, very effective in weathering, especially on roofs, and on the lower brickwork below the factory. Again, oil paints not to be dismissed, as they give a nice streaked effect when you add a bit of turpentine, streak those oils around, and you get lovely streaky rain spots and weathering on the tops of your roofs and on the sides of the building. We'll look at on the sides. I use an India ink wash and a fine brush, emphasizing the area around the windows. This is a good technique for vertical surfaces because what you're simulating is rainwater running down around the windows and getting that effect. Here we've got the finished building with all the rain streaks, some dry brushing of pastels, and the colors have been corrected inside the window lights so they look much more appropriate. Here's an overview of during the daylight of the completed model. Annex on the left, the diner's restaurant, the alleyway running down the middle, and the now company warehouse standing behind it. Here's an overview in the daylight. You'll notice the corrected yellow light showing in the windows. We're looking down the alley past the barber shop. Note how the mirror allows you to look all completely back through that alley, follow the curve of the road. The Nighthawk's diner itself, looking at it from the angle about where Edward Hopper stood when he made the painting. Looking over to the right to the more detailed side entrances of the building, the sidewalks added, and the railroad company warehouse. Here's a still shot of the alleyway. Notice how as you walk down the alley, the road curves to the left, the sidewalk follows it along, and you're actually going out behind another building. Here's the Nighthawk sign, and again you see the curvature of the alley, but when you're looking straight on, you cannot see that recessed illuminated door from this viewing angle. Looking across from simulating the actual painting, except that it's now lit up, and the barber shop with the pole in place and the hardware store are all illuminated and ready for occupancy. An overview from the top at night. We're looking down on the annex, down the alley through the curved area from the mirror to the diner, and over on the right is the warehouse lit up with a slightly different pattern than the last photograph. It now changes every 10 to 12 seconds. We conclude with an overall video of the annex and restaurant and diner, all the denizens of the Nighthawks at night. Our annex building with the correct yellow cast lights, the barber shop with its lighted pole, even looking down the alley through the curved line as it wraps around the building, the Nighthawk Cafe. We see light through the skylight, through the upper windows, through the apartments up there. So everybody's still awake. It's early evening in February 1942. Looking at the back, we come to the warehouse with a different set of lights, and we wrap ourselves up there. And it's time to say good night.
Well, Jim, I think you did a beautiful job of that.
Well, thank you. Are there any questions on the final details and weathering it up so it fits on the layout either during the day or during the night?
I thought your lighting was fantastic. I really did. I wish I could do the things that you do with those LEDs.
It just takes a little patience and a good soldering iron.
Well, thanks so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it. And I know other people have enjoyed it. It's just a beautiful model and can't thank you enough.
Well, I had a great kit to my thanks to David for a kit that went together beautifully and was easily customized to turn it into something appropriate to layout.
Well, thanks again. Well, now we'd like to turn to the My Build for this evening. This is our monthly show where modelers from the show get an opportunity to show off some of their modeling. And if we could run the sponsors video for this, thank you.
Sorry, Jim, wrong one.
Welcome to the world of scale, O&S railroading. We are your resource for all O&S scale modeling. Both our magazines are advertiser supported and free to read online, download as a PDF, or even print. All advertisers are hot linked to their website, so if you see something you like, just click. Please check out our websites for the current issues. All back issues available free for the O-Scale Resource and the S-Scale Resource magazines. And, if you are a manufacturer, distributor, or retail establishment, please contact us through our website for advertising opportunities.
Well, I really appreciate Amy and Dan Dougherty for sponsoring this part of our show. Their magazines are meant to be bringing modeling back into model railroading. And I think that they're doing a great job in doing that. And it's fitting that they would sponsor this segment of our show. So now I'd like to turn this over to Phil Edholm, who's filling in for Chris Course this evening. So Phil, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks, Jim. Well, it's good to be here. And Chris couldn't be here, so I've tried to put together a my build, and hopefully it'll go okay. So with that, we're going to just do a little share here. And you guys should be seeing a screen, and we will get started here. So this is actually some of the builds we have this week, and it's going to be pretty exciting. And before we start, though, did want to go ahead and remind everyone to check out the O and S scale resources, resource magazines. They're pretty cool. It's a great opportunity to go see some things, and the things that'll be done here tonight will be featured in one of Jim's articles in the magazine. So Jim's actually looking to get some information from each of you about the build for him to add into the pictures that'll be put in. So we have a pretty exciting group tonight. It's actually 9 different modelers, so we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. Our first modeler is Mike Warman, and Mike's first because he is the only model builder we have that actually did a model based on the 100-line covered bridge build-along that was recently there. So, Mike, if you can join us here and talk a bit about your model.
Okay, now I only submitted the final pictures of the building, 6 different angles of the building. What you may notice is I did forget the signage on each end. I have to still finish that. But I followed along as best I could with Rick and Maureen, and they do a fantastic job, I think, of showing us what to do and what not to do with the bridge. So you want to show the pictures, you can.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, this one side of the bridge, you see the weathering and how the top edge is not as weathered as much as the main side. And it shows some of that black thread that you usually get at the bottom of your building over time also from the rains and so on. And this is the second side. And I didn't break it up as much as some people like to do. because I put a lot of work into this. So anyway, and then you do the next one, shows the ends. There you go. That's the one end, and then we have the other end. I love the texture on the roof. They're laser cut shingling is fantastic. A lot of work putting it together, but the results I think are really great.
So what did you find was the hardest part of building the kit? I mean, if you kind of look at it and, you know, as it looks now, what did you find was the most difficult? And, you know, were there areas that you were surprised by that you thought would be challenging and you were easier? Or, you know, talk a little bit about building the kit as how many, and like, have you built other things like this in the past?
No, I mean, we did their other two bridges, but this was the most challenging one. Actually, the roof, trying to keep them straight, trying to keep them staggered so you don't have the seams line up on them. I worked out a method of doing that, and just being patient enough not to go too fast and watch them slide off. The glue does
looks like you did a good job, you know, really good job on getting them lined up and making them look good.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. Hours.
Mike, what scale did you build the model in?
This is S scale.
The roof shingles that you had trouble with, do you have a tip for other modelers who may want to build this kit in the future? How did you get them so straight? Because they look great.
I initially drew a straight line, and I put the board on that they suggested at the very bottom to do the angle, and then put the first layer in there, following that straight line that I had drawn on there. And then when you put the others on, you just make sure that all of the ones below are covered right to the edge with the ones above. Kind of a tricky thing to do because they're staggered so much. So as long as you don't see where you're not supposed to above a certain line, a certain level, and with the ends of those staggered tiles, you'll come out pretty good. I think there's like 11 rows of tiling on this.
That's a good job. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I appreciate being able to do this because it's a great kit. It really is. It looks really cool.
So are you going to use it in S scale, or are you going to use it for ON3 or ON30?
Oh, no. I am strict S scale.
Strictly S scale. Cool.
Strictly S scale. All three of them are.
Excellent. Excellent. Well,
Thank
next
you.
we have, so thanks, Michael. It's great. Really appreciate it. And look forward to another one next month or the month after.
Okay.
So I've got to keep everybody challenged here. So our next builder is Jeff Jordan. Jeff, are you here?
Trouble getting, there we go. I was having trouble getting unmuted.
Yeah.
Cool. So Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about your model here and where you're going with it, and I'll pop it up and we can see one of your views of it.
Yeah. For my mining district, when I visited Montana, I found that they had power shovels out there back in the day. One of the museums there has a power shovel parked out there. It's not a steam shovel, it's a diesel. But and I wanted one. And anybody who models an O probably aware that there's not a lot of choices out there other than some extremely detailed, extremely expensive brass models. There's next to nothing out there. And after hunting quite a while, I discovered that Lionel had made a kit which they intended as a flat car load. And I've always had a lot of fun taking what I think were toy-like plastic models and trying to turn them into much more of a prototypical looking model. So this is the Lionel power shovel. And though I did not alter the model at all from the parts that come out of the box, I did a lot to make it look more prototypical. One, of course, is thoroughly priming it and painting it. And the paint colors match the photograph of the steam shovel or power shovel that I saw in Montana. Another thing that really boosted the model, in my view, is the model did not come with any glazing. And so I glazed all the windows. The flat ones are pretty easy, using evergreen styrene clear and just cutting it to fit. The tricky one is the front of the cab there with the curved window. And from there, I tried something I had never tried before. Mike Buddy, who appears on Model Railway Hobbyist, does a lot of model cars and glazes the windshields with transparent tape. And so that's what that is that's transparent tape, carefully cut or burnished and cut to conform to the window. And as you can see, it gives you a nice reflection that the cab now looks entirely glazed. And there are a couple other details there. Since it's going to be in the background, I debated carving off the grab irons and so forth and replacing them with wire. But since it was in the background, I settled for just highlighting them with paint. And then the model is actually a little bit more weathered than these photographs show. You can see the screens have been highlighted with a wash. The tracks have been touched just a little bit of mud. And what doesn't show up in the photo, but does show up in person, is the whole cab is streaked to look like just dirt running down the sides from rain. The other thing, very subtle, but I like the way this photo reveals it, is behind the boom there, you see just a little black rectangle. Well, in the model, as it comes in the box, that's open and you look right inside the body of the cab. And I couldn't have that. And so what I did is there's construction paper and I wrinkled it and placed it and it fills the hole. So it sort of looks like a flexible boot that would flex out of the way as the boom comes up. And as you could see in some of the photos, there's some other weathering and it's just rigged right out of the box. I thought the rigging that they provided was relatively, accurate. There should be a few more lines, but again, for background model, I thought it looked good. Oh yeah, and one last thing, the model as it comes from Lionel on the cab there to the right of the door has a great big Lionel logo cast into the side. Fortunately, it's all raised plastic, and with a little patience and care, I shaved it off, sanded it down, and by the time it was sanded and primed, there's no Lionel logo there anymore. And so it's
I have to say, Jeff, other than the Lionel blasphemy you just talked about,
yeah,
which I'm sure the purists will no doubt condemn us for, it looks really good. It's excellent.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to putting it in the background in my mining district to just provide some more activity in the mining district and some more interest and hunting around in eBay and the like, and maybe it was trains or whatever. I got this for $20. And with a couple of really enjoyable evenings of work and painting, I think I get a pretty decent power shovel out of it.
Excellent.
I think you did a fantastic job. Let me ask you this. What other kind of construction equipment do you have on your railroad, Jeff?
Well, you've seen in a previous episode, the bulldozer.
Yeah.
And that the Tamiya Japanese naval bulldozer really lends itself to turning it into a civilian bulldozer. And so I've got that. And then after this, I discovered that Corgi, the British toy maker, made a 1/50th scale power shovel as well. And it's a little bit smaller than this one, because the photograph I have, the Rio Grande Southern photo of their snow train where they had a bulldozer and a power shovel loaded on flat cars. I wanted to replicate that. And this guy is too big. He will not go on a narrow gauge flat car. But the Corgi, which is 1/50th, with a little bit of weathering and so forth, is going to fit right in on the flat car. Other than that, right now, it's mostly just various trucks ranging from a Ford Model AA to the 55 flatbed from Atlantis. I like having lots of vehicles. And again, in O scale, that's a challenge because I don't want 1/43rd scale vehicles. I want 1/48th scale vehicles. And so you have to hunt to find stuff that fits in.
Thank you so much. It's a beautiful model that you created there. There's no question about it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, our next My Build modeler is Bob Farquhar. And Bob,
All
can you
right.
jump on.
Yeah, right here. So,
And I think you've got a train story to tell us. So I'll start and let you tell your story.
so this is a HO scale. It's a logging train, logging work train. This kit's from Sierra West scale models down in Texas. And pretty much put it together just the way they asked for it, then weathered it up and so on. The next picture. So this shows the base of the single truck units, and you have to do your own wheels and the couplers and stuff like that. So before the next picture, I wanted to do a logging caboose, a bobber caboose. So I wanted to add a bit of whimsy to this thing and add a cupola. This is HO scale, and this is scratch built, this one. And so this shows different views on each side of this thing. The next one, and there's the front and back. And in Ottawa, about 8 years ago, they had a regional convention, and it was called the Bobber Convention. They had a separate category for the best bobber caboose, and I actually won that one. And I thought it was kind of funny to put the cupola on there just for fun, Anyway, and the interior is all detailed. Like, you can't see. There's a stove, a chair, and a bunch of wood cut and everything else, but you can't see it really. And the last one, this shows the whole thing together. So that's it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I love it.
And it fits right into the train so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice job, Bob.
Well, thank you.
Excellent. Well, our next My Build is John Garrity, and I'm hoping John was able to stay up and join us, because he's in Australia, and he said he would try to make it, but he wasn't sure. I'll give him a second longer and see if he can get off. I probably should have gotten a phone number. I could have called him and woken him up and said, time to get up. And oh well, kind of not the good train way to do it. So I'm going to just run through these. This is actually a modular layout, and it's basically what he sent was a trip up the layout. So it starts on one end and goes up to the other end, I think, to where the mines are. So kind of walk through it. There's a few pictures here in each area. It kind of starts off over here in this area, and then kind of goes around and goes up. So you can kind of see the train. Unfortunately, I have captions for this, but I took them off because I actually hoped he would be here. So you can kind of see the trip of the train going up. Then there's a Y where there's an engine house. And this again is modular, so it's all fairly short distance. And then the train arrives at the top of the hill where the mine is, and the mine cars are bringing out the the ore for the train. So that was basically what we said. I'm assuming he's not on. So I think that'll probably be our short trip through that, and Jim will have to, well, I'll have to send you the captions for that because I do have them.
He's
Oh,
not
that-
on, Phil.
Yeah, and that's fine. They were really cool pictures, and it would have been nice if we had the captions. I probably would have been good to have had them up here with the different places to note, but I'll send them to Jim for the article. And with that, our next My Build modeler is Gary Shergold. And I know Gary is here. I saw him earlier.
Yes, I'm here.
Cool. I will jump over right away to your building.
Okay, that's that's showing the back end of the building. That's not photo one. I think that's the last photo. There we are. This is a Sylvan kit, stone, Fieldstone family home. It's an actual kit of his wife's family home, which is still in existence today, built with Fieldstone and cedar shake roof. What I had done was, this is the front of the building. I omitted the front porch, which is a set of steps going up to a landing in the photograph. If you go to the next slide. Okay, this shows the back of the building. And the way this, it goes together fairly easily. It's a polyurethane kit. It went together very nicely. To do the coloring of the brick or the stone itself, it's a three-part process where I painted everything a concrete color. And then what I do is when I do my stone, I have I use acrylic paints and I go in a 5-step process. So I have the paints numbered from 1 to 5. And I take the building and I start with a first color, which is number 1. And I randomly go around and paint all the stones that I want to paint. Then I go to number 2, do the same thing and follow the process right through till I get to the end of the 5th paint. Now, what happens with the stones, they're painted black, red, a little bit of blues and things like that you'd find field stones. And to tone that all down, I put a wash of hunter shale over the model, which really tones the colors of the bricks and blends everything in together and gives it that shale grayish sort of look. So if you go to the next photo. Okay, what happened was the previous photos you saw the back door, which is just a single door, no windows or nothing else. So I thought over the years from families moving in and living in the building, they would have one time added an addition. So what I did was I scratch built an addition, which is I called a summer kitchen, and a deck at the back that you could walk out onto. And this is the addition that I had put on. I used from scrap windows. It's Campbell shingles on the roof, and from my junk drawer, which is full of all kinds of parts, I was able to get some windows. This was colored with Jim or Chris's method with pastels and hunter line stains.
The wash that you put on the other building, that was a hunter line stain?
That was a hunter line wash shale over
Okay.
top of, and that was the 3rd step in the process.
Okay,
And basically all that does is blend everything in and takes away that sharpness of the reds and the blacks and things like that, the browns. sort of blends it all in. It makes it look more realistic. And the roof is a cedar shingle roof on the main building. And what I wanted to do was, it was weathered with the pastels and the stain, and then lightly sanded to bring out a little bit of the cedar.
It's really a beautiful structure.
Thank you.
Very nice. And you know, I think the great thing about it is that you have that common concept of being able to get the random stones. And I just figured out the reason is that it's actually a random process. I've been doing a random process, and I need to get it become a process so it's a little more random, because mine never look as random as yours.
Yeah, this a few years back with the WOD NMRA, I had done a clinic and showed that process within that clinic. It's fairly simple. It's time consuming, but the results are amazing.
I guess what I find is my random turns out to be less random than I would hope sometimes. And so it's that process. I've got to get the random process down. Anyway, thanks, Gary. That was absolutely great. That's a great model and looks really good.
I thank you very much.
Super. So our next My Build is Martin. Martin, are you here? I think he is.
No, I'm not here.
There he is. So Martin, I think you have a building. I have this feeling you'd shown us this at some point in the past, and it looks like it's come to fruition.
It's finished, finally. Yes, you're correct. I've shown in progress photos on at least two other My Builds. And I finally got around to finishing it last month, just in time for the Strasbourg Oak Scale meet. And it's just a little fun thing I put together. Getting rid of a bunch of leftovers in some ways and just freeform, not knowing exactly where I'm going at times and just building it as I go. So in this case, I started with the center section of this, with the two platforms on it, and kind of roughed that out. And then decided, well, we need a side building on the one side just for fun, for supplies and bits and pieces and odds and ends and storage. So that got put together. So the center's clapboard. The one end is board. Both ends are board and batten, but there are different types of board and batten on spacing, or whatever I had in the box from. I don't know if it was Northeastern or who, where I got it from. I don't really pay that close attention to it until I run out of it and desperately need to replace it. And the rest is just grant line parts and bits that were in the box of use these up because we don't know what they really belong to. Leftover half packs of this and missing parts out of that and open pieces. So that double window is actually just two windows welded together with some methylene chloride. All the sinks and toilets and what have you, those are old Walther's white metal castings. They're probably as old as I am, if not older. Some other odds and ends from other places. I'm not sure where the stack of bags came from. It's Artista figures. I don't know where that time clock came from. I picked that up off eBay. I have no idea who made it, but I thought, yeah, we need to be responsible and clock into work on time every now and then. So I don't know how many pictures you set up in this, Phil. I sent you a bunch. Oh, there's the backside, which is not that interesting, but it's there. The little platform out the back. Oh, yes, there we go. Yeah, that smokestack off the back, that's actually left off from the Kershaw build that I did a couple of weeks ago or months ago. I didn't use it, threw it into the shoebox of miscellaneous and thought, oh yeah, that'll fit right there. Just what I need. So there's a lesson learned is, even stuff you don't use in some kits, throw them in a box. You'll find a use for it someday. Basically, it's, yeah. So there's the other end, that other piece. That's the little add-on addition there. That door was all put together. It's a whole bunch of pieces of wood and little hinges. I toyed with the idea of making wood working hinges and said, no, I'm just not feeling that adventurous today. It's not hard to do. I just got lazy and, so the roofing here, you got cedar shakes on one end. You've got, that's actually paper corrugated roofing on the other end. It's actually printed that with that weathering on it. So I didn't have to do very much, a little bit of stain here and there, and some moss and some grass growing on it because things do grow on roofs when you're not careful about cleaning them all off. The other roofing is all builders and scale corrugated that I've painted. And you haven't grown up and had fun until you've painted a metal roof in your youth with your grandfather. And it's just a wonderful day spent out in the hot sun, sweating over with a big long stick with a brush on the end of it. It's a great way to spend the day. It's sort of one of those Mark Twain type things where you'd really like to find somebody else to trick into doing it for you. So, and there should be a sign around the front, which is there another slide?
That's it.
Oh,
Let me go back here. You'll probably see it. It's going to be back here at the beginning.
There we are. So it's Sethian and Sons, Sinks and Plumbing Inc., Septic Sewage Sucking Services, which is a bit of a homage to Winston Rothschild III, who some folks may remember from New Red Green. And this is actually going to go to the Strasbourg O-Scale show in August, and with the hopes of auctioning it off on behalf of the fire company. So we raise a bit of money and hand that to them just for fun.
Cool.
That'll be neat. That will be neat. Thanks so much.
Yeah, once a year, I think I'm going to be building something silly or extravagant or extravagantly silly. I'm not sure which. See if I can embarrass somebody with their name on it, and we'll sell it for money to give to the fire department.
Gotcha.
Excellent. Well, our next My Build is Rich Wolfhanger. Rich, are you here?
Yes, sir.
Cool. I will jump to your first slide, which I have an engine.
I actually showed this before. You didn't get my 2 new models?
That's
These
what I
were-
have.
These were up before. I could do them
Okay.
again. That's fine.
Okay. I'll go back through. These were,
Okay, I took a plastic shell off a lifelike engine and made a backwoods engine, which is the model which is on the top. And scratch built that tender water car. The boiler was made with a brass sleeve from surveyor's hand level, which had broken the vials. So I saved it and I thought, well, maybe I can make something with this. And then I cut a piece off that weight, which is far right, and added some wood sides to it to be able to glue it to my model. The upper left picture was the weight was put back on there with a wooden frame, and I added some BBs for some extra weight, not knowing how much weight I would need after I cut a piece of that off to be able to go on the track and stay there without derailing. Once a pack rat, always a pack rat. Mostly as a scratch builder, I don't throw anything away. So I use a lot of things that I find in my scrap box, which the white round cylinder there was, I cut a piece of that off to put underneath the lantern for the light. And then the next piece was part of a pen. I cut a piece off of that, which was narrow at one end, so it made a nice stack, which is the black piece above the white pencil. The other thing there is a piece of rubber that's round, and I cut a piece of that wood round to put atop of that to mount on the outside of the engine. And the next piece was an ink vial from a surveyor's pen, ink from Coley Noor's ink pen. I cut a piece off the bottom of that and made that where you see the bell and the I forgot what that part's called. And then that's about it for that picture.
Rich, what scale are you modeling?
HO, sorry.
Okay.
Everything I do is HO.
Okay.
And the picture on the left shows the platform on the deck that I made to put the boiler back. So I had to cut that wooden frame round at the bottom to accept the round cylinder. And those other plastic parts were put onto that light. That's the original light from the original engine. I didn't take it off and I needed to cover it up, and it still works. So that turned out well. The wood cab was scratch built. The tender car has a brass part from Cal Scale, which made that hose reel. And I wound some thread around it, which is twisted. And I found a little metal piece. It looks funny, but it made a hose end. I added some tools and I put in some raw cut wood. On the back is a fire hose. And I added some more wood to the back of the engine itself. And there's a fireman putting wood in the engine and an engineer on the other side. So basically I built this scratch built wooden engine to cover over where the plastic shell was. I just like the backwoods engines more than I do plastic shells. That's about it for this.
Cool. Then jump on to this. Dry goods.
This is scratch built Elijah Ross from Fine Scale Miniatures. On the railroad line forums, if you look to the building to the left, it says Bwalani Lumber Mining Company. One of our members passed away, and that was his railroad. So his good friend, who is another member that has been on New Tracks Modeling before, Larry Knapp, sent us all who built a tribute model for Bill Anderson, passed away, and his name was Geezer, but his railroad was Bwalani Lumber. We all put his decal for his railroad on our models too, as a tribute to him. And when I built the Fine Scale Miniatures main building to the right, I added a full stairway to the front to give it some extra character. The original kit did not include the stairs, and it did not include the sign where I put dry good lumber, work clothes. That didn't have that on it either. And I built the cupola, which was originally a square typed flat, more flat roof, peaked roof, but I made it in 4 sections to give it extra character as well. And those are cedar shingles. Those are wood cedar shingles from Sierra Scale Models. I hand built that I'm not sure what you call those things, where the hook and rope is on there. There's a wine keg upstairs because Geezer and his friends every night on the forum had a thread where they would all share a glass of wine, either red or green. So I painted some bottles up there red and green. So the guy is reaching for red.
Mhm.
And then there's a sign out front in that barrel and it says gone fishing. Oh, that was one of Geezer's favorite pastimes when he wasn't modeling. He'd be out fishing.
That's beautiful modeling. It really is. Thank you so much.
But
There's
we
some
got
more
one more quick one here, Jim. This
Oh,
was,
I'm sorry.
The left picture is the backside corner, showing the stream that leads from leads to the water wheel that I built, and that's a stone wall. Those are those were made from Fine Scale Miniatures had a kit called Cartwright's Machine Shop, and those walls were made out of metal, and I made some molds and made my walls from using the metal walls. I made molds to make hydrocal walls. Those are stone hydrocal walls, colored with chalks and stains. The color on the building, the main structure there is Depot Buff by Tamaya. And the scratch built barn, I use 100 line stains on that. The picture to the right, that's a Jordan Highway Miniatures truck there, and I made a scratch built wooden back to that. And the guys out back just finished cutting down one of the pine trees there, and they stacked their wood up to the left. And there's a fellow there in front that's loading lumber. Okay, that upper picture shows those walls, and I had 2 inches of pink foam in there. The stream bed was made with clay on this one. I wanted to do plaster, but then I got to thinking about how much of a mess cutting and sanding and scraping plaster to make creek banks with. So I pressed some clay in there, not knowing whether or not it was going to work. But it did, and to this day, I want to tell you guys, the clay is still intact and it never shrunk, and I will use it again, definitely, because it also takes paints, stains, and ground cover pretty well, and it'll last, and it doesn't move around. It didn't crack, and it was really a good idea and a good modeling medium to use, and I will use it, definitely use it again. That's black foam board on there on the underside of that building. I hand built that water wheel, by the way. I took a 2-inch piece of black hose that you use, like, I'm not sure what that black hose is called, but it's a 1/4 inch thick piece of 2-inch black hose there, and I glued on all those individual water paddles and hand cut the round water wheel, added strip wood and nuts, bolts, and washers to that. I hooked it to the top of the stone using a stake pocket that was made from brass that I acquired someplace along the way. There were 2 other models that I gave to Chris, so maybe he told me that he would probably be able to send those to you, and I'm surprised that you didn't have them. But that's okay.
that's what happens sometimes.
That's okay.
This was very good. Those were very, very nice, and went through them. That was good, and we got them to Jim then.
Hey, here on the left, I see that guy is putting up the outside new timbers there, and that poor fellow is using the toilet. I was
That was very nice.
Thank you.
And we'll jump on now to our next My Build, which is Bill Stimson.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. And Bill's got and this is, I think, is N scale.
This is an N scale version of a Thomas York model, the Altman Miller machine shop. The structure is built from styrene with builders in scale corrugation over the top of it, and tissue windows and doors, except for the big door. That one I scratch built. And it's a piece of sprue that I've bent to be the support of the door. And HO scale grab irons that I found in my scrap box are holding the door to the sprue. And the scrap on the side is just some plastruck that's been painted, barrels and things attached to the top of the barrels just to be details outside. You got some more pictures, I think. There's the back. There's a fan on the back. The model that Thomas York did had that fan in the front window, and I thought that was an odd place for a fan because when the doors open, it's covered. So I moved it to the back. But he did have this big monster vent fan on the top. So I added that. I think there's a couple more pictures. There you go. There's you can see on the right, that's the inside. I actually tried my hand at putting framing inside. Those are 0.02 by 0.02 pieces of styrene stuck onto a piece of 0.01 thick styrene to simulate framing on the inside, even though you can't see it because I didn't leave the door open far enough to see. But and this shelf unit is sitting right inside the door. Maybe that one picture you might be able to see inside to see the shelving, but I doubt it. And the siding is covered with a gray paint, acrylic paint, and then was it burnt umber, raw sienna, and yellow ochre are the colors that I used to simulate the rust. And you get some more pictures.
Yeah, one last shot there of the building.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it behind that guy. There's that shelf with all this stuff, and I guess with the way the light is, it just doesn't show up. I found the acetylene torches at a swap meet this weekend and just kind of added them to this structure.
And I think you had just a couple of other pictures that you included that are probably other projects.
Yeah, these are projects I showed off last month. The one on the right is another Thomas York, but I found a diesel bell at the same swap meet, and I meant an HO scale diesel bell. I managed to cut the frame off enough to stick it into that gate for the Pepinos Pintos. And the one on the right, I was working on last month and kind of showed it in partial construction. Well, I got my builders in scale corrugated siding, so I finished the roofs on this and then started work on the elevator shaft that you can see on the top. It's still not done, but it's moving along quickly.
Excellent. Any questions for Bill?
I think that's just absolutely outstanding in scale. I really congratulate you on a beautiful model. That's really something.
I think the thing you've got to do whenever you have this kind of a model is you have to take a picture with a scale next to it,
Yeah.
with a ruler there. Just because how big is it? you know,
Let me check. What do we got? It's 2 inches long by 1.5 inches wide.
so it's, you know, it's tiny. So anyway, looking very good.
Thank you.
And so the last my build, I thought I'd go through this. I actually did a clinic on this at our regional convention. I've shown some pictures this through time, kind of building this has been my kind of primary back project, getting back into modeling here. This is a warehouse, and all of the framing is 3D printed. And so if you look at this, it actually, if you look at the interior and everything, the trusses are 3D printed. They have gussets that were added to them. The roof is actually a 3D printed unit. And I took some pictures to get the lights inside at one point. But what I actually did was then added on the roof. And so this is actually a whole bunch of cut. This was Northeastern, their O-scale corrugated siding. You can see kind of a carload here of siding. That was all painted with some gray. It turns out it's hard to get really light gray paint any longer. And this is all basically rattle can. And then I used some of the dark brown to do some of the coloring on it. This was actually for about a month and a half, just had me not wanting to do it because this all had to be dry brushed to make it look reasonable. But once I got that done, and you can kind of see the dry brushing here now, kind of the change in color where you get some coloration. Put the roof on, and this is kind of what it looks like when it got done. And this is a picture of the model. It's got the doors in it now, and it's on the module where it goes. I need my summer task. I want to get the pier done here in front of it. And this is kind of just a final picture of it with location on the module with some other buildings. This is the back side where there's a track, so it has sliding doors that actually slide. They're built with a carbon fiber sliding rod, and this is kind of a picture of it, how it sits on the module. So that was kind of just an update on something that hopefully after the narrow gauge convention and getting some interior details will be in a much more completed state. So with that is the end of my builds for this month. And our next my build will be June 29th. And so mark that on your calendar. And if you've got a project, get it ready to build and build it out for June 29th. So with that, it's back to you, Jim.
Phil, let me ask you one question. You've got the, John Garrity, you've got the captions that he sent with his photos?
I do have them. I'll send them over to you.
He models 7mm scale, right?
I will have to look at it and see. I don't know for sure.
I think he does, which is really different than O scale a little bit. But it's very popular in Australia and England, that part of the world. And he does just a beautiful job with it.
Yep.
Phil, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all your hard work, and thanks for filling in for Chris, and look forward to Chris back next time.
Next month. Have a good one. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you. Well, that pretty well wraps us up for this evening. I hope you've enjoyed it. Most importantly, I hope you learned something. I want to thank you again for being here this evening and spending the time with us. And if you haven't registered yet on our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling, please do, and ring the bell so that you'll get official notices from YouTube of all of our future shows. And we're going to be starting another series of shows on the 2nd of June. And that series of shows won't be live on Zoom. It'll be live on another software called StreamYard. But it'll also be live on YouTube, which is another reason for you to register and to subscribe to the YouTube so that you don't miss any of those new shows. This is something totally different than what we've done in the past. And we're really looking forward to this. We have a lot of people that are new that we haven't had on any other show, but that are making real history in our hobby, and people that I really think that you're going to enjoy meeting. It's much more of an interview show with the modeler, 3 of his close friends, and myself. And it'll be just a bunch of people sitting around chatting about the modeler's hobby and what he's accomplished and what he does for model railroading. So with that said, I will turn this over to Clark Kooning, MMR, for our after show. Clark, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's been a long day here. It's been a beautiful day, and I've been out staining and painting a 20 by 40 foot deck. So it's been not that fun.
Clark, before you start, just wanted to make a comment. Jim made the comment that the new Thursday night show was going to be available on StreamYard. Actually, StreamYard is the tool that you use. It will be available on YouTube as a stream. So all you have to do is go to the New Track site and you'll be able to see it as a stream there. But it's not going to be done as a Zoom meetup where there's a whole bunch of people on screen. It's just going to be limited to basically, you know, the four or 5 people on screen that are part of the program that night. And it's more similar to what you see on YouTube for kind of streaming content versus this, which is kind of more meeting. Anyway, just I didn't want anybody to think that you had to go out and get StreamYard to see it. All you'll have to do is go to YouTube and you can see the whole thing there.
It'll be like watching Johnny Carson.
It will be, except it'll be sexier.
Okay, but won't be any good because there won't be any Rodney Dangerfield. But anyway.
What time will that?
Karnak says it'll be sexier.
What time that night will it be on?
7 p.m. Eastern.
There you go. 7 p.m. Eastern. So, all right. Who's here that's maybe new? And I know I don't want to say who's here that's old because you're all old.
All of us.
That's right.
Just go down the list, Clark, pick one.
I know, and I'm like one of them. So anyway,
I ain't gonna go there.
Clark, one of the things that you'll be pleased to know, Paul Egret, in your honor, not only has he designed the service station that we're going to be building on one of the build-alongs pretty soon, he's going to completely detail the interior of it in scale just for you.
Oh, well, thanks, I think. Yeah, you know, Paul and I have this love-hate relationship going on. He sends me these fantastic models and he goes, "What do you think of this?" And I just send a note back saying, "I'm not talking to you." And then I go, "No, thank you very much." And then I print them off. I've got a whole stack of them in a folder here. So
I'll send you this. I'll send you the service station so you can add that to your file.
Don't talk to this man. Oh, brother. All right. Hey, anybody want to talk about what we saw tonight? Is there any? I have and it's. I hope nobody takes offense to this because this is just one of my pet peeves. When people say I scratch built it, a kit isn't a scratch build. It has to, you have to actually make the part and build it. So that's my pet peeve. So other people may say, but I know a lot of kit people who build fine scale miniatures. They say, well, I scratch built it. No. You built a kit, but that's my pet peeve.
If it's been personalized, then I like to use the word scratch badge.
Well, that's fine. That's a whole different story. But I know when I'm judging contests and stuff, people say it's scratch built, and you go, No, it's a standard kit. Like, what did you do? What's the scratch building part, you know? And but they believe just putting a kit together is scratch building, and that's not the case.
I agree with you, Clark, 100%.
How about using the word kit mingling or kit bashing with
Sure.
scratch build?
Oh,
Sure.
yeah.
You know, like
But
some
it's-
of the stuff I know I scratch build and the
Yeah.
rest is kit. So it's kind of combination.
Yeah, and I see it. I mean, I see it on the forums and stuff. Guys will build a nice kit, but you know, it's a Bar Mills kit or it's a whatever, and you go, well, it's not scratch built. But a lot of people believe because it's, you know, sticks and siding, it's scratch built. No. So, but that was a personal note, and I hope I haven't offended anybody tonight. But
So tell me, Clark, if you go to the hobby shop, buy like your windows and doors from whoever,
right,
to fit, is that still, and you scratch build everything else, would that still be a scratch build?
well, if you're looking at the
Yeah,
NMRA
depending
category,
casting.
it's considered scratch built, but what they do is look at the percentage of the model. So if you've got 500 windows that are Grant Line windows, you know, your
Not
percentage,
really.
it's only maybe a 60% scratch build, right?
Oh, I see. Okay.
I think
And,
Roy, maybe Roy, for just on a layout, I would call it scratch build. I'm doing a building,
Yeah,
doing the design. I'm going to build it, but yeah, I got commercial windows.
but
for
there
it.
are a lot of exemptions in the scratch building if you want to get real technical to it. Like if you're scratch building a car, you don't have to build the trucks.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. Yeah.
But I just think people sort of overuse that term a lot, and that's just one thing for me. But anyway, yeah, I think if you know, say I scratch built the building and I use Grant Line windows, hey, no problem.
Yeah.
You know.
I think also you could probably say that if you, for instance, you scratch build the interior of a kit, you can use the word scratch build for what you did on the interior, like the desks and chairs.
Absolutely, but tell me what you scratch built. Don't just say this is a scratch built model.
Right.
You know, when you know it's a fine scale model or it's a Bar Mills or you know
Exactly.
whoever it is.
Not doing credit to the people that build the kits, manufacture the kits, and that's what I feel.
And you know what? Like I say to people all the time, if you can build some of these kits, these high, a little better than, you know, basic kits, and you can do them well, that's an art in itself.
Yep.
That is good modeling.
Well, the early kits where you had to, before laser came along and all the windows are cut out in the doors and the whole wall.
Yeah.
You just got a box of sticks and some plans and some castings, and you did.
Well, I don't know how many of you, there was a fellow in Ontario, he since passed away, called John Rendell.
Yeah.
And John had these kits and people would buy them because they look beautiful. You'd see his displays and you go, oh, I got to have one of those. And then they get home and they start building it. And the next thing it was at the flea market for 10 bucks because they were unbuildable.
I think he cut all his wood with an awl.
Yeah. He actually cut his own basswood.
Yeah.
And it was so rough, and his instructions, you know, it's like anything. When you know what you're doing, if you're the kit manufacturer and you build the prototype 25 times to get it right, and you go, okay, this is what it looks like. Well, you glue A to B and then C, and then you're done. Well, the guy who's never opened a Craftsman kit before, he reads that and he goes, what is he talking about? That's a big art. That's a big art in itself. You look at some of the really good kit manufacturers, their instructions are so that you can build the model.
Yeah.
You know, and that really makes a big difference, really makes a huge difference. So, and I give kudos to those guys because, you know, the hours it takes to design a model, but it takes probably 4 times as many hours to write the instructions. So
I've heard the hardest part for a manufacturer is writing the instructions, just hand.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys ever seen the Sierra West model, the sawmill model of the sturgeon sawmill. And that one actually, I think it took 10 years to do the documentation for the model. It's got like 4,000 or 5,000 parts, that kind of thing. It's, you know, so it's really interesting that there's 2 parts to this that are, there's one is the aspect of building a model once you know how to build it. And then there's the taking a prototype and figuring out how to turn it into a model.
True.
I think those are 2 really different. I think, Clark, what's really interesting is the skill of taking somebody having already done that kind of conversion, but then building it, depending on the complexity of the model, can be incredibly complex.
Yes.
And it turns out for that model, that building to that level of detail, what you've done is aggregated the research creation across 100 modelers versus trying to do it 100 times. And it's a real, if you think about a kit at that level, what the kit manufacturer is doing is they're aggregating together 2 things. They're aggregating the research to build the kit and decide how to build it, the knowledge, and then they're putting an instruction process together that gets you through the process of how to assemble it.
And some read it, and some read it, and some say, I don't need instructions.
But I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, there's this, but there's a point at which you've got that, you know, you know how you're going to build a kit. So Martin says, I'm going to build something. He kind of got some steps in there. Sometimes he may start with no steps, which is kind of a different process, or maybe that's more of a process. I don't know. Got to decide which one.
Precess.
But a precess. But basically, yeah, there you go. It's a precess. With a precess, you start with nothing. But it's an interesting thought process about the value of those in different areas.
Yeah.
Of the, you know, the creation versus the construction process.
Yeah. Well, even
I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I built a couple of kits that were basically hand-drawn pictures and wood.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for a bunch of other kits, I wouldn't have known how to build it. That's what I would term a craftsman kit, when all you get is a sketch and a bunch of wood, and you're supposed to build something with it. So it can be quite challenging for a new person to get one of those kits and to have to figure out how to build it.
Yeah.
I just had exactly that experience. You know, I've built a number of Bantas kits, the large production ones, and they're quite good. I think he builds the kit several times. He uses that to write his instructions. He photographs it for the kits that he produces lots of. But I recently got his kit for the Vance Junction section house, which is one of his on order only kits rather than, you know, a standing one. He cuts it to order, and it comes with a single page printed on both sides. That's all the instructions you get. So you have to put together a few other kits to be able to assemble this one.
Well, and I don't want to speak for Bill, but I do know Bill and I know the kits. When he bought the company, there was a number of those kits just like that. So he then kind of took a few of the favorite ones and maybe upgraded them. And then the ones he's designed, he's done the full, you know, program on it. And that's why they're to order. But, and I don't want to speak for Bill. Bill will be on, I forget when Jim has scheduled them, and we can ask him about that. But I know from the other owners, because I happen to know who they were, they were dealing with much more experienced modelers. So therefore, that's what you got.
And that explains a lot.
Yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't the first Banta kit I tried to assemble.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another manufacturer in the Northeast. I won't mention the name, but he does beautiful, beautiful kits, but he lacked instructions. So he got another manufacturer after a while. It was a friend of his to do the instructions or proofread them. but he felt that the people that were going to buy his kit were as experienced as he was. So I think it was headed for a market of experienced people, but maybe that's not the right thing.
And yet we have a common person that we also know, Larry, and I'll just say R&R,
Yeah.
who built beautiful structures, and they're very detailed instructions.
Yeah.
You know. So
Clark, if you take a set of blueprints or instructions from a kit
yeah,
and scratch build from those instructions, is
Yeah.
that scratch building?
sure. If you go out and acquire the parts, right, and don't use the kit, that's scratch building.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Hey,
that's
Gary.
that's
Hey,
no
Gary,
different.
just,
Yes.
hey, Gary, you stole my question. I was about to ready to say it.
Well, it's the same as going through MR and say, "Oh, look at the plans. I'm going to build this through the article." Well, it's still scratch building.
Yeah. I've taken a number of Campbell instructions
Yeah.
and built kits,
Yeah.
which are scratch built from their instructions.
Yeah.
And I classified them as scratch built.
And you look at you go back to Campbell. They were the Athern of wood structures, back when. And then laser cutting came in and so forth. But really, when you look at the Campbell kits, man, they're still very, if they're done well, very few Campbell kits that aren't fantastic kits.
Yep. Cut my teeth on those at the Railway Club, DNR.
Yeah.
We used to buy a lot of those.
Yep.
Because they were available to us.
Yep. And so yeah, it's kind of a neat evolution of structures and kits that has happened in the many years, and we're seeing it again now with 3D printing. We're seeing it again now with 3D printing. Phil has done some stuff at home. There are new manufacturers coming on board. They're not only doing like mini prints, they're doing people and stuff, but this Yelton Models is doing homes and O scale and HO and all kinds of stuff. So it's really changing the hobby. But I would say the biggest changes have been the laser cutter to date.
So is laser cutting scratch building?
If you're doing the drawing and the cutting, yes, it just becomes a tool.
Mhm.
Because you still have to be proficient in doing it, right?
Designing
And you still have to assemble it.
programming and assembly. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I definitely agree on the laser cutting.
See.
It,
Yeah, I know.
people who built in the past certainly remember the day when you opened a kit and it was stamped wood with the door openings and the window openings were just stamped partially through, and you had to finish cutting out each one and try not to crack the sides while you did it and so forth. I had the recent experience for the fun of it. I got a Campbell kit
One of the
from
guys on the model
1970
railroad
and built it. And let me tell you, you really appreciate the quality of the new kits when you put together a 1970 Campbell kit. I built the Triangle Cafe, and it finished up pretty nice when it was done, but it was a very different experience building it.
Well, I think most of us, I maybe make a little generalization, but started with, Gauls airplanes, wooden balsa airplanes, and the wing ribs would come sort of stamped. And you'd open it up and go, oh, how many kits have they made from this stamp? Like, it's just making an outline now in the balsa wood. It wasn't even cutting the wood. Oh man.
I think one thing you got to remember, Clark,
Yeah.
I think one thing you got to remember with some of these kits that are very complicated, it does train you on how to start scratch building on your own. It gives you some idea what you should do and how to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a beginning for you to move ahead. And the more of them
Absolutely.
you do, the better you get.
Yeah, and that is totally usually the step. You know, you usually go from a plastic kit to maybe kit bashing to a laser kit. From a laser kit, you go to scratch building type of progression, more or less. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but that's how most people progress. And so, or do it in brass.
Okay,
is that?
Clark,
Yes, sir.
that's a low bow kit
Yeah,
from about 1948,
right.
52, somewhere there. That's the post-war version of it. And that was a kit.
Yeah.
That would test your soul.
Yes.
Because that's not light brass. These parts are bronze. Yeah. So I got this, and this entire corner was broken. Someone had dropped it, and this part was missing. Had to make it, had to repair the band, but yeah, my soldering iron doesn't have enough oomph to repair this. I had to use one of my torches to put it back together. So,
well,
nice job, Martin.
Yeah.
well, when I got it, I thought, well, I looked at it and I thought, well, I saw the broken part. I thought, well, that's not a mortal wound. I can probably fix that with enough clamps and some ruby flux and some good solder. I thought, and I made the only mistake I made was thinking, oh yeah, well, I don't want to use the torch because I'm afraid I'll have
melt everything else off.
I'll knock other pieces off. And I just put the torch in there anyhow, because the soldering iron wasn't going anywhere. It's just laughing at me. So
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, this is sort of on the scope of the building a locomotive workshop kit.
Yeah.
So there's a name for the O-scalers in the room. Anybody who's aware of what those were like, you got a shoebox, and you opened it up and you said, "Who sent me a box of scrap metal?"
Well, I'll tell you a story similar to that. Larry knows the story better than I do, but a common friend of ours, him and his wife were driving around out in Pennsylvania, and they like to go to all these hobby shops, and they went into one of their favorite hobby shops. When we got there, there's a guy out there sweeping, and burned down to the ground basically the day before.
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I don't know if we told this story, but
Yeah.
Larry, you want to take it from there a little bit?
I think we told it before.
Oh,
but
okay. Well, some other guys, maybe just a short version.
Well, hey, on your instructions front, the locomotive workshop instructions are the most fun. So I have a Pennsylvania Railroad H1. It's a little tiny 280, 1880s, 1890s. The instructions for assembling that were 2 pages. Single, double spaced, printed on one side each.
Yeah.
Things like assemble the mechanism. That's and yeah, that's the way those instructions are. Assemble the cab, assemble the boiler, add the details.
You're done.
Yeah, pretty much. Except you tried to do that and you found out that the drive mechanism was impossible, physically impossible to operate, or to even install. So it makes it an adventure.
I have one of the newer, was it 70-ton box cabs from Grant Line before they went out of business. And they have a different motor, because I had the old set and I put those together without any problem. They ran great. The new one, I still am, I pull it out every once in a while and look at it and go, okay, what is he trying to tell me in these instructions? So.
Yeah. Well, instructions, that's always been one of my personal pet peeves. People write 2 pages for when there should be 50, or or they leave out every other sentence that should have been there, or they skip ahead and forget, like, well, they presume that everybody knows as much as they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've always, it's like, they need to be beta tested.
Well,
You have to hand it blind to somebody and say, here, build this and tell me why my instructions are, if they're any good.
Yeah, I know our friend out in BC, Interaction, he has them as number of his kits beta tested as he goes, and
yeah. And then you can at least feel confident that you're selling something that people can actually build.
Yeah.
And a lot of fun.
Yep. Theoretically, you actually have fun doing it too.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Maybe that's what you do when you send one to Bob Brown, free, put together.
Yeah.
Has anyone here gotten one of the Stevenson model, like the engines to assemble?
Stevenson preservation?
Yes.
Yes.
I've known one or two people to actually build them.
I've got one, and
it's a cross between Lobau and Locomotive Workshop.
Yes. And we put it together. We got the trucks working, and it's a I forget now. Anyway, it was missing the base for the locomotive part.
Yeah, there you go. That helps.
Now I have to get a hold of it. It's been sitting for so long. If I tell him it's missing, he'll say, really? I don't care. I'll pay for it.
He's a pretty reasonable guy, actually.
Yeah, I don't mind. I just let it sit too long.
Yeah, I always stop by his table in Chicago.
It was a challenge. I thought I'd get one and try it.
Hey, Larry, you look like you're
yeah, I was going to mention that.
You look like you're in the
pages.
Frankenstein
Twilight Zone.
I don't know.
He's in the Twilight
lamp on my computer here. I am in the dark. Just
turn the light on.
I'm just getting the glow off.
That would help.
Well,
turn a light on.
Well, that's like that's why people say to me all the time, how come you're in the dark? I said, well, because I have the face for radio.
But, just like that.
Well, I'm getting ready. I do a midnight show.
With Elvira?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Should
we
stop streaming?
Hey, Martin, you were talking about soldering. I picked up a soldering iron from Canadian Tire. It's a Weller. And I'm looking at this thing and think, yeah, that'll do what I want to do. For soldering a bunch of brass and stuff together. And so I hold down the button. And well, this thing must have a lot of wattage. The end is glowing. And I looked at it, it's up like you can get 900 watts out of this baby. Ooh. And the reason for it is that they want you to be able to solder the silver solder. But I'll tell you, when you're doing wires onto track and you put a couple of heat sinks on,
it's instant.
On and off, and you don't destroy anything. It's so quick. A lot better than using a 25 watt iron on your track.
But those things aren't light either.
Oh no, they're like yeah.
Oh, it's not a pencil?
No.
Oh no. It's
it's like the old master.
It's induction. It's an induction one.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's almost instant heat. It's induction. Yeah. So I just find they're so much faster if everything's clean and ready for soldering wires onto your track. It's like almost instant.
Yeah.
And you don't destroy the ties.
The first couple of times I tried resistance soldering. I had a foot pedal, and it is totally the opposite of a standard soldering iron. The soldering iron is hot. You apply the heat. You touch this, a resistance. You actually have to put the two things, then apply the power. Do not pull the needle off of the piece of track without turning the power off, because man, I had lightning in the basement. Scared my little self.
That's the entertainment portion of the program.
Oh, you know what? I unplugged it and went upstairs and went, oh my God.
You can vaporize little parts with it too.
Oh man.
They just disappear.
Yeah. But now, Well, I don't have it anymore. I actually traded it away, but because I really didn't have any use for it anymore. But now I'm thinking maybe I should have kept it if I'm going in a
Brass.
Proto 48.
Yes. But you have to get a Proto 48 one.
Yeah, that's right.
Roy, on your soldering gun, Weller, you're just using the tips that come with them?
Yeah, that's all I've used so far.
Yeah. A lot of
Have you
guys,
got a better suggestion?
well, the fellow Clark was referring to about going to that hobby shop that burnt, and he recovered a lot of pieces and built many locomotives, but he uses it. But he used to take, I think it was 12 gauge wire, copper wire, and bend it and then just flatten the end at the end and put that in rather than the ones.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The ones they give you are, if I'm right, I think they're, they're metal of some sort and they got an alloy surface on them. But, and the new Wellers, the only thing I don't like from the old ones, they used to have like a collar on it, threaded. And when you put the tips in, you would tighten it down. Nowadays, they got little set screws and I've broken those darn things off. And,
Yeah, that's easy enough to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had to change the tips. So I didn't even look at it that much, except for I always know if you're going to do a lot of soldering, you haven't used it for a while, make sure the tip things are properly put down, make sure they're good and tight. Otherwise, you won't get the heat you should get out of it.
Right.
Yeah, those two little nuts, you got to make sure they're tight.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you got an older one, you got, the nuts, these set screws, I do not like them. So, but
yeah, I can understand that. Yep.
Where'd you go, Clark?
I'm just up, so I didn't. You guys don't need to see me wandering around.
Oh.
Put your clothes on.
Ah.
Put on Sarah pants.
So what are you doing?
I'm actually feeding my fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, Martin, this
That's what they're calling it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fellow we're referring to, Martin, it was Harold Midwood. And so one of the guys in our group is a collector of brass locomotives, but he wanted it changed to another number. So he brought it over to Harold to work on it. And so we were all gathered around on Wednesday evening. So Harold says, well, first of all, we got to strip it. And the fellow started to shake. Well, Harold had an old fashioned piano stool that the little seat used to spin.
Yeah.
And so he just put a piece of metal on there, put the locomotive boiler and that on there, just got a torch, the large torch with the tanks that you use for household plumbing. And he just started turning the stool and everything just came undone. And he says, there, now we can start and we can build a locomotive.
Oh, God.
But
He was deconstruction.
Yep, but he had no worries.
Well, that's what it probably panicked.
Well, the fellow that owned the locomotive, the look on his face was priceless.
That would have been useful if we'd had your cell phone there with a capture of that on film.
Yeah, it was about a $1,500 locomotive, but when he finished, he got a locomotive that was better than what the original product was. More piping, all the piping inside the cab. And the cab was made so it could take on and off for painting with screws underneath, because that's a pet peeve.
Yeah.
You get locomotives, you pay that much and you can't get the cab off. So
when I first got into model railroading, I used to do custom painting for brass. And someone had told me that if you paint the model and put it in the oven at a they didn't say a low temperature.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what I had done was I painted a beautiful Pacific, put it in the oven to bake it at about 350 degrees. Went in about a half hour later to get it. And there was an awful lot of number of pieces laying all over.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have a story.
That locomotive came out, stripped, resoldered all back together.
We have a fellow,
Repainted and sold.
yeah, we have a fellow, Clark would know him. He's in our region. I won't mention his name, but he was doing custom painting for a hobby shop down this way. And so I think it was like 60s were in the shop. So he was painting a bunch of them for customers that through the shop. So he painted about 4 or 5 of them, and he put them in the oven. He had them on really